In this edition of New England Authors, we're going to hike the 4,000+ foot peaks of New Hampshire. There are 48. With Cheryl Suchors as our guide. Have you ever hiked mountains or thought about doing so? Then listen to what our author has to say about overcoming personal challenges and finding success. Welcome to New England Authors. We're talking with Cheryl Suchors, and her book is 48 Peaks. It's about hiking in New Hampshire. So welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, Kameel.
So how did you arrive at this goal of hiking these 48 peaks? They're over 4,000 feet, right?
Exactly, 4,000 feet and over. The highest is 6,288 feet, Mount Washington.
Yes. I bicycled up it.
Yes.
There's a bicycle race once a year, and I bicycled up that one time.
Oh, that's got to be a beast.
Yeah, it's 13% grades and so on. So, yeah, I'm a little familiar with it. But what's it like to hike it? What drove you? What drove you personally?
Well, I was 48 years old, so 48 and 48 had a certain resonance. But mainly it was that I was in the middle of a career transition, and it was not going so well. So I needed something that would help me feel better about myself and allow me to have some kind of sense of success. So I thought, well, let's do something very concrete and hard. It had to be hard, so if I could do it, I would feel good about it. And the career I was transitioning from business to writing, and I'd always wanted to be a writer. So it was like my dream, and I was totally messing it up. It was not going the way I had hoped. So I thought if I could find something else, sort of the opposite of writing, something that was very physical and very obvious. I mean, you either got to the top and got down, or you didn't. You know, there was no gray about it. And so I was looking for success, really, is what brought me to those mountains. And along the way, I realized that, you know, as there is in any endeavor, there are certain sort of normative definitions of success. And I stuck with those for a while, and then I was like, this doesn't work for me. You know, I don't, when I do what, you know, the measures for success and doing the 4,000 footers say, I don't enjoy it as much. So I changed along the way. I changed my definition of what success is and tailored it to myself, which is something I learned later in life is really important for all of us to do, right?
But you had to overcome personal challenges. You have scoliosis and knee. So this was not like a walk in the park. I was going to say a terrible thing to,
No, it was none of them. Not one of them was a walk in the park for me.
For all 48 peaks.
Pretty much. I mean, there were a few that were easier than others, certainly. But I was fortunate because I did one of the harder ones first because I'd never heard of the 48. I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And so I climbed Mount Tri-Pyramid.
Right.
And
that's in your book, in the beginning of your book, right?
Yes, and that's literally on that mountain is where I learned about the 4,000 footer club and the 4,000 footers, and I thought, oh yeah, this is just what I need. This is like, you know, getting into the club, right?
So there is this, you talk about this 4,000 footer club, right? And is that, what is it?
Well, it's a group that's run by some wonderful volunteers from the Appalachian Mountain Club, and it's open to everyone. Anyone at all can join after you've climbed all 48 of the 4,000 footers. And you document it as you go. You fill out a sheet that says what day you did such and such a hike and who was with you. And if you want to say, you know, a few words about it, you can do that too. And then it's basically the honor system. You mail it in and you get your patch.
You get a patch.
You get a patch.
It's like when you were a kid, you get a little stamp on your
Exactly. It's you know, so it's obviously not for the great patch reward.
So tell us, what are that area like? What's the mountains like? Are there trails there? What's it like?
There are trails. It's actually, you know, a part of my heart will always belong to the White Mountains. They're beautiful. They are difficult to hike.
Yeah.
I've hiked a lot elsewhere now after the 48. And so I've been in the U.S., I've been to Colorado and Wyoming and California and Washington, state of Washington, and various places. And I've been abroad to a number of countries hiking. And, you know, those big mountains are actually, I find, easier than the Whites because they have enough room, you know, on these big mountains so that you can have these traverses that are much more gentle in incline, whereas in the Whites, they're, you know, 450 million, 400 anyway, million years old. And so a lot of them has been eroded and worn down by glaciers and other things, the weather. And so what's kind of left is what you'd see as the cone on one of the big Rockies, for example.
Yeah.
And the trails have, generally speaking, very difficult footing, very rocky, very rooty.
Yeah.
You almost can never take your eyes off of the trail because you'll trip. I mean, I know I've done it many times.
Yeah.
And often you're climbing up boulders and down boulders, and you're going up and down and up and down and up and down all the time. So as some people say, you spend all morning going up and then you spend all afternoon coming down.
Yeah. So your book is also about people, right? You had friends. You started off with friends. Could you start off by telling us about your late friend, Kate?
Kate, sure. Well, Kate was my best friend at the time, a woman 6 years older than I, and we decided together that we would take on Mount Tri-Pyramid, that first mountain I mentioned, and go together. And we both just fell in love with it. It was really hard for both of us.
Right.
You know, we barely made it. Took us 10 hours, you know. And we were also there with my friend, my best friend from college, Sarah. Kate and I just, you know, kind of this whole thing, we had trained for it. We weren't sure we could do it. And then at one point we realized, we're doing it. We're here. And after we got past the halfway point, it was like, well, either we stay here and die or we keep going, you know.
Yeah.
And so she and I continued to be training partners, now became hiking buddies. She was my daughter's Auntie Kate. She was my dog's Auntie Kate. You know, we just did lots of things together.
Right.
And this became our newest thing.
Yeah.
And so, and I was, you know, kind of gradually, I think I would have gotten her to sign on for all 48, but we did 5 of the 4,000 footers together. And then she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2002. And she was incredibly brave and had numerous rounds of chemotherapy and went into remission for a little bit. But then her cancer returned, and in the spring of 2002, I lost her. But it was the mountains and getting back into nature that gave me all this energy that I lacked, you know.
Yeah.
And it was in that process that I just, I fell in love with the natural world.
It was a healing. It was a
tremendously
healing.
healing.
Yeah.
You know, that sense that you are a part of something bigger and part of this miracle, really. You know, you're in this huge web and you're connected to the trees and the flowers and the tadpoles and the snakes and the bears and the birds and all of that.
Yeah.
Just a remarkable feeling.
This is New England Authors. If you're joining us, we're talking with Cheryl Suchors, who's climbed the White Mountains, 48 peaks of White Mountains, and is part of the 4,000 Footer Club. You bonded with so many other people when you were hiking, right? But
I did.
you also went alone on a couple of hikes. Was that dangerous?
Well, you know, I'm always amazed by people who hike alone doing 4,000 footers all the time. When I was finishing my last one, which was Mount Isolation in 2008, my friends and my husband were there, some of my friends who had climbed with me, and a young woman came up. She heard all of us. They were kazooing. You know, she's a jolly good fellow.
Yeah.
And she said, "Did somebody finish the 48?" And I said, yeah, it was me. And she had done all of them herself. She was finishing, I think she had 2 more to go. And she had done all hers by herself, a young woman. And I think it's kind of dangerous, only because you never know. You never know. You can trip and break something. It's not unknown. It's happened to me.
No, you don't have cell phone coverage? Oh, it happened to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, you're right. You don't have cell phone coverage, and I did. I broke my wrist hiking, and I was headed up, and I finished the hike, and I thought I had sprained my thumb. I don't know. You know, I was kind of the adrenaline had me going, but you know, it was pretty painful. And but anyway, the weather changes in a nanosecond.
Yes.
You know this, right?
Yeah.
And
it could be really nice on the bottom, and then there's a storm brewing up on top, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or, you know, you start out in August, and as you get higher, it feels like November.
Yeah.
You know, so you have to be prepared for all kinds of things. I would say that probably the biggest danger is hypothermia, because often it rains. I did a number of them in the rain. And, you know, it's hard to keep your body temperature up the minute you stop moving. And
you could slip because it's not a trail. A lot of it is rock.
A lot of it is rock, and the trails can be very slippery. Wet roots are slippery. Rocks are slippery.
Wet leaves are very slippery.
Wet leaves are very slippery. So you're absolutely right. So I would not have felt comfortable doing lots of them by myself. I did a few, as you say, and I loved them. There's something very special about doing it by yourself. But I also loved doing it with friends and family. My husband came with me. I think I've got the numbers right, on 17 of them.
Oh.
And my daughter did 9 or 10 of them.
Right.
My little dog, my Bichon Frise, my little 13-pounder, she did, I think she did 8 with me.
Yeah.
And the rest were all women friends, and occasionally a couple of men joined us as well. But mostly it was my women friends. And that was really satisfying, because for most of us, it was really challenging, a little scary, and we really helped each other through it. One of the things I like to do before my hikes is whoever's in my crew, you know, we talk about what are our hopes and fears before the hike. And that was very helpful to me as a leader, because I knew that, well, you know, one friend really wanted views and another friend was scared of crossing brooks on her own,
Right,
and
right.
another liked to go ahead if it was a really difficult part, and another didn't want to. She wanted to see someone else go first. And just being there with other women facing those fears was really delightful for me.
So you mentioned that you get together at the beginning. How else do you prepare for the trip? Do you exercise beforehand?
Oh, I have to, yes. My aging body, and I have a bum knee and the scoliosis, and then after cancer, took me a long time to get back to shape. But well, for a long time, I worked out by going up and down the subway steps in Porter Square, which is one of our...
that's a very long number of steps.
I call it the Mount Washington of subway stations.
Right.
And, you know, so my friend Kate and I started this, and we would start at the top, and going down and coming back up was called one porter. And so gradually, you know, we'd build up the number and build up the numbers. So we got to where we were doing 9 sets of porters at once, and that was excellent training.
Oh,
but my knee, after a while, my knee just, I lost cartilage. And
at the beginning, you kind of gauged yourself with other people, your ability with other people.
Definitely, and very competitively. I will say the word if you want.
Okay.
I mean, I am a competitive person by nature and by training. I have an MBA and worked in the business world for 20 years before becoming a writer. So, yeah, and I learned that I had to set my own standards,
right?
You know, and the hike became more internal to me, and it became much more about connecting with nature, because I learned the hard way that on hikes where I didn't connect with nature, I just wasn't very satisfied.
Right.
You know, I'd done it, yes, that was great, and I had talked with friends, and that was great, but that missing piece of, you know, just looping into that web that was all around me and feeling part of that beauty, I needed that.
This is New England Authors. We're talking with Cheryl Suchors. She's written a book called 48 Peaks. How do you find someone to go with? What do you wear? If you're psyching yourself up for a hike, what's the practical aspects of it?
Well, usually I would start out by picking dates when I could go hiking, and then I had developed a pool of friends who were interested, and I would talk to anybody who said she was interested in hiking. Some people I found in book groups, some people I found at my daughter's school. One was a friend of my husband's. So I was totally unfettered in reaching out to women. And then, you know, people would sign up, and it was very important to me that I wanted each person who hiked to assume their own authority, to not give it over to me as the leader. I wanted it to be a very participative endeavor. And so different people would bring, you know, one would bring food for breakfast one day, and another for another day. Another would bring food for dinner, and others would figure out how to drive to the trail. I always chose the hike, and I also prepared something that I called a personal hiking log, which was really important to me in that it set out all the milestones along the way, So it will take us 0.6 miles to get to the first creek crossing. And the elevation gain for that is 700 feet. And then we'll go for 1.5 miles until there's a trail crossing. And that 1.5 miles will be, relatively easy. But the next 2 miles is going to be wicked hard. Mm-hmm. And that helped me a lot preparing mentally, visualizing what it was going to be like, where the hard parts would come so I could time breaks to refuel. We could sort of help each other for the difficult crossings or the very steep bits. And as to what you wear, wicking clothing and many layers so that you can take stuff off and put it on. You don't want to be stuck with something that's too hot or too cold. Lots and lots of water, which sadly is very heavy. But need to carry a lot of water and snacks, and some lunch. You have to carry a lot of gear. Even in the summer, you have to be prepared for wet weather, foul weather of all kinds, snow, cold. If you should injure yourself, you have to think about the fact that you might have to stay on the trail for 3 or 4 hours while somebody goes, or longer, goes to get help. And you need to stay warm.
You talked a little about communing with nature. This was a big aspect in your book, and it's very beautiful. And the way you're describing it now, it's very beautiful. What's the difference, you think, between like contemplating in nature in that setting of the creeks and the environment around, and contemplating, say, in a convent or a monastery? What do you think would be different than that?
That serenity and that sort of alpha state that you get into, or theta state, where you're very calm and there's a serenity to it. I think that is quite similar. There's more of a sense of bonding.
Yeah.
With everyone around you. I know a lot of First Peoples talk about Sister Rock and Brother Tree and, Grandmother Mountain and things like that. And I do like that. I have that feeling when I'm out there that I'm really not alone.
Yeah.
And for someone who spent a number of years fearing being alone, that was just magical for me.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So I have another obscure question.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
No, not at all. Ask away.
In the book, you talk a lot about yourself, and you go back to your youth sometimes. And after you went through this experience, did you find that you have different memories of your youth than before? That is, for example, you might have thought that some things you did were failures or stupidity, and then you saw later on something different about that. Is that a good obscure question?
That's a wonderful question. I'll tell you one thing that happened to me that I had totally forgotten about my childhood and not connected it to my hiking, was that just after I finished the 48, I took a group of women who had been sexually abused in childhood out on a hike. Someone had asked me to, and so I did. And at the end of it, and it was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had, because it affected them so profoundly. And to see their fear and their joy and their delight and their sense of empowerment was such a gift for me. And one of them at the end said, I really want to thank you because you've brought back a part of my childhood, just to your question, that I had completely, a good part of my childhood that I had completely forgotten about, which was that I used to hike in the Blue Mountains, which is just south of Boston. And
you mean the Blue Hills?
the Blue
great
Hills,
Blue
sorry,
Hills,
the
yeah.
Blue Hills. And that was a very important place for me to get away from, you know, my troubles and issues, and to allow me to feel very much myself. And I thought, you know, that comment just stuck with me for day after day until finally I went, same thing for me. In my childhood, I moved around a lot. My family moved. I call us corporate gypsies.
Right.
And wherever I could find a forest or a trail of any kind, or rocks, or just anything to get out into nature, I would go by myself as a kid and just wander around, you know. And this was at a time when it was less dangerous for kids to do that, you know. And it really helped me get through some of the travails of childhood, and some particular to my childhood that I mentioned in the memoir. So I did remember that a lot, and I did find myself looking back at my younger self and thinking that I was braver than I ever saw or understood or gave myself credit for.
Right. Well, it's so good to have you on the show. The book is 48 Peaks. This is New England Authors. We're recording here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. We broadcast on stations throughout the regions. We also have our episodes on YouTube. And remember, watch locally.